The morning sun cast long shadows across Meadowbrook Farm in rural Kentucky when 8-year-old Samuel Sam Henderson made his way to the old red barn, his bare feet silent on the dewy grass. Born with a rare condition that left him unable to speak, Sam communicated with the world through gentle gestures, expressive eyes, and an intuitive understanding of animals that seemed almost supernatural. His grandfather, William Henderson, had owned Meadowbrook Farm for 43 years, raising prize-winning Angus cattle that were known throughout the state. But today, something was terribly wrong in the barn, where their most valuable bull, Max, lay suffering from a mysterious illness that had baffled 3 different veterinarians. Max was a magnificent 2,000-pound Black Angus bull, the pride of the Henderson family and the father of their finest calves. For the past week, the once mighty animal had been lying in his stall, barely eating, his breathing labored, and his eyes clouded with pain. "Doc Peterson doesn't know what else to try," Sam's mother, Sarah, whispered to her father-in-law as they stood outside Max's stall. "The antibiotics aren't working. His fever won't break, and he's refusing food completely. We might have to make a difficult decision." Sam couldn't hear the words being spoken, but he could read the sadness in his mother's face and the defeat in his grandfather's shoulders. The boy had been watching Max's decline for days, and something deep inside him told him that the bull wasn't just physically sick. He was heartbroken. 3 months earlier, Max's longtime companion, a gentle cow named Daisy, had died during a difficult calving. Since then, Max had been listless and withdrawn, but the family had assumed he would recover from his grief naturally. They hadn't realized that cattle could mourn so deeply that it could manifest as physical illness. Sam slipped past the adults and approached Max's stall quietly. The massive bull lay on his side in the fresh straw, his ribs showing more prominently than they should have, his once glossy black coat now dull and lifeless. "Sam, honey, stay back," Sarah called softly. But the boy was already inside the stall, moving with the fearless confidence that only children possess around animals they trust completely. Max lifted his great head slightly as Sam approached, and for the first time in days, the bull's eyes showed a flicker of interest. Sam knelt beside the animal's massive head, his small hand reaching out to gently stroke the bull's forehead. The moment Sam's fingers made contact with Max's warm skin, something extraordinary happened. The bull's labored breathing seemed to ease slightly, and he released a soft, low sound that wasn't quite a moo, but more like a sigh of relief. "Look at that," whispered William, moving closer to the stall. "He's responding to Sam." Sarah joined her father-in-law at the stall door, both of them watching in amazement as their mute son continued to stroke Max's head with infinite patience and gentleness. Sam's other hand found the bull's neck, and he began to make soft humming sounds, the only vocalizations he could produce. For 30 minutes, Sam remained kneeling beside Max, his small hands working in slow, rhythmic motions across the bull's head and neck. The boy seemed to understand instinctively that Max needed more than medical treatment. He needed comfort, companionship, and the knowledge that he wasn't alone in his grief. "I think Sam knows something we don't," William said quietly to his daughter-in-law. "That boy has always had a way with animals. But this is different." As the morning progressed, other family members began to gather at the barn. Sam's father, Robert, arrived from checking the other cattle. His sister Emma, home from college for the summer, came running when she heard that Sam was in the stall with Max. Even Mrs. Jenkins from the neighboring farm stopped by after hearing about the bull's illness. But Sam remained focused entirely on Max, seemingly oblivious to the growing audience. The boy had positioned himself so that his head was resting against the bull's massive neck, and both of them appeared to be finding peace in each other's presence. "He's been like this for over an hour," Sarah explained to the gathered family members. "I've never seen Max so calm since Daisy died." Dr. Peterson arrived for his daily check on Max and was stunned to find the bull in a completely different state than he'd seen him in days. Max's breathing was steadier, his eyes were clearer, and for the first time in a week, he showed interest in the bucket of grain that Emma had brought. "This is remarkable, doctor," Peterson said, approaching the stall carefully. "Yesterday I thought we might lose him. Today he looks like he's turned a corner." Sam looked up at the veterinarian with his expressive brown eyes and smiled. One of his rare, beautiful smiles that lit up his entire face. Then he returned his attention to Max, continuing his gentle ministrations. "That boy understands something about healing that medical school never taught me," Dr. Peterson admitted to William. "Sometimes the medicine an animal needs most isn't something you can find in a bottle." As the day wore on, Max's improvement continued. He lifted his head more frequently, accepted small amounts of food, and even struggled to his feet for a few minutes, the first time he had stood in 3 days. But more importantly, the sadness that had clouded Max's eyes since Daisy's death seemed to be lifting. Sam's presence, his gentle touch, and his patient companionship were providing something that antibiotics and medical treatments couldn't address: the healing power of unconditional love and understanding. That evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Sam remained in the barn with Max. Sarah brought him a sandwich and a glass of milk, which he ate sitting cross-legged next to the bull's massive head. "I don't understand how he knows exactly what Max needs," Robert said to his family over dinner. "It's like they're communicating in a language only they understand." William looked out the window toward the barn where his grandson continued his vigil. "Maybe that's exactly what's happening. Maybe being unable to speak with words has taught Sam to listen with his heart in ways the rest of us have forgotten." The second day of Sam's vigil with Max brought changes that amazed everyone at Meadowbrook Farm. When William Henderson arrived at the barn at sunrise, he found his grandson curled up asleep next to the massive bull, using Max's warm flank as a pillow. More remarkably, Max was awake and alert, his dark eyes following William's movements with an interest that had been absent for weeks. "Well, I'll be," William whispered, careful not to wake Sam. Max had not only eaten most of the hay from his feeding trough, but he had also drunk nearly a full bucket of water, more than he had consumed in the previous 3 days combined. Sarah arrived an hour later to find Sam awake and gently brushing Max's coat with an old grooming brush he had found in the barn. The bull was lying peacefully, his breathing steady and strong, occasionally rumbling with contentment as Sam worked. "Dr. Peterson is going to want to see this," Sarah said, pulling out her phone to call the veterinarian. When Dr. Peterson arrived that afternoon, he could hardly believe what he was witnessing. Max was not only standing, but had walked several steps around his stall. His temperature had dropped to normal for the first time in a week, and his appetite had returned completely. "In 30 years of veterinary practice, I've never seen a recovery this dramatic," Dr. Peterson told the assembled family members. "Yesterday, I was preparing you for the worst. Today, Max shows every sign of a full recovery. If this incredible story of healing and connection is touching your heart, we'd be so grateful if you could hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us share more amazing stories like this one about the power of love and understanding between humans and animals." Sam continued his constant companionship with Max throughout the day, and the bull's transformation became even more remarkable. He began eating regular meals, his coat started to regain its glossy sheen, and most importantly, the deep sadness that had defined his behavior since Daisy's death seemed to be lifting. But it wasn't just Max who was changing. The other family members began to notice something different about Sam as well. The boy, who had always been withdrawn and communicative only when necessary, seemed more engaged with the world around him. His confidence had grown, and he moved with a purpose that hadn't been there before. "It's like taking care of Max has awakened something in Sam," Emma observed to her parents. "He's always loved animals, but this is different. He's found his calling." Robert Henderson, who had often worried about his son's future in a world that seemed designed for people who could speak, began to see new possibilities. "Maybe Sam's differences aren't limitations," he told Sarah that evening. "Maybe they're gifts that allow him to connect with animals in ways the rest of us can't." Word of Sam's remarkable success with Max began to spread beyond Meadowbrook Farm. Mrs. Jenkins had told her neighbor, who told someone at the feed store, who mentioned it to a reporter from the local newspaper. By the third day, people were stopping by the farm to witness the extraordinary bond between the mute boy and the recovering bull. "I've brought my daughter to see this," explained Mary Sullivan, a mother whose own daughter had been born with developmental delays. "I want her to understand that being different doesn't mean being less capable of making a difference in the world." Sam seemed unaware of the attention his work with Max was generating. His focus remained entirely on the bull's well-being, and he had developed a routine that he followed with the dedication of a professional caretaker. Every morning, Sam would arrive at the barn before sunrise and spend an hour simply sitting with Max, his small hand resting on the bull's neck in a gesture of companionship. Then he would groom Max carefully, checking for any signs of discomfort or illness. Throughout the day, he would return periodically to provide fresh water, arrange the bedding, and offer the quiet presence that seemed to be the key to Max's recovery. Dr. Peterson had begun documenting Sam's methods, recognizing that he was witnessing something that could revolutionize animal care. What Sam is providing isn't just physical care, he explained to William. He's addressing the emotional and psychological needs that we often overlook in animal medicine. The most remarkable aspect of Sam's care was his ability to sense Max's moods and needs without any verbal communication. When Max seemed restless, Sam would spend extra time brushing him. When the bull appeared lonely, Sam would lie down beside him and hum softly. When Max showed signs of discomfort, Sam would adjust his position or bring fresh bedding without being asked. "It's like they're having conversations that we can't hear," Sarah marveled, watching her son work with Max on the fourth day of his recovery. The breakthrough moment came when Max, who had been lying down during Sam's afternoon grooming session, suddenly struggled to his feet and began to walk slowly around his stall. It was the first time he had shown this level of mobility since his illness began, but what happened next left everyone speechless. Max walked directly to where Sam was standing and gently lowered his massive head until it was resting against the boy's chest. Sam wrapped his arms around the bull's head and held him in what could only be described as an embrace. "They're saying goodbye," William whispered, his voice thick with emotion. It wasn't goodbye in the sense of parting, but rather goodbye to the grief and sadness that had been consuming them both. In that moment, both Sam and Max seemed to release the weight of loss and isolation that had defined their recent experiences. The family members watching this exchange found themselves wiping away tears, moved by the profound connection between the boy who couldn't speak and the animal who had been dying of a broken heart. Max's recovery accelerated dramatically after that moment. Within 2 days, he was eating normally, moving freely around his stall, and showing interest in the activities happening around the farm. But more importantly, he had regained the spark of life that had made him such a magnificent animal before Daisy's death. Sam, meanwhile, had found a confidence and sense of purpose that transformed his entire demeanor. He began helping with other animals on the farm, and his intuitive understanding of their needs proved invaluable time and again. "I think we've all learned something important from watching Sam with Max," Robert told his family one evening. "Sometimes healing doesn't come from medicine or technology. Sometimes it comes from simple human compassion and the willingness to be present with someone who's suffering." By the end of the first week, Max's recovery was nothing short of miraculous. The bull that Dr. Peterson had expected to lose was now walking freely around his pasture, his appetite fully restored, and his coat gleaming with health. But the transformation extended far beyond Max's physical healing. Something profound had shifted in the entire dynamic of Meadowbrook Farm. Sam had appointed himself as Max's permanent caretaker, and the family had willingly embraced this new arrangement. Every morning, the 8-year-old boy would wake before dawn and spend the first 2 hours of his day with Max, establishing a routine that brought structure and purpose to both their lives. William Henderson, who had been farming for over 4 decades, found himself learning new approaches to animal care by watching his grandson work. "Sam sees things we miss," he explained to his wife Margaret one evening. "He notices when an animal is lonely, or scared, or just needs extra attention. It's like he speaks their language." The most remarkable aspect of Sam's gift became apparent when other animals on the farm began seeking him out. Horses would approach the fence when they saw him coming. The farm dogs followed him everywhere. Even the usually skittish chickens seemed calmer in his presence. Dr. Peterson had been visiting the farm daily to monitor Max's progress, but he found himself staying longer each time to observe Sam's interactions with the other animals. "I'm documenting what I'm seeing here," he told the Henderson family. This kind of intuitive animal communication is extremely rare, and Sam's natural abilities could be invaluable to veterinary science. News of Sam's success with Max had spread throughout their rural Kentucky community, and people began bringing their own sick or troubled animals to the farm, hoping that Sam's healing touch might help their beloved pets and livestock. The first visitor was Tom Bradley, whose old border collie, Rusty, had stopped eating after the death of his companion dog. Tom had heard about Sam from Mrs. Jenkins and decided to take a chance on the boy's unusual abilities. "I don't know if this will work," Tom admitted to Robert Henderson, "but Rusty loved that other dog for 12 years. Since she died, he just lies in his bed and won't eat. The vet says there's nothing medically wrong with him." Sam approached Rusty with the same gentle patience he had shown Max. He sat beside the grieving dog for over an hour, his small hand resting lightly on Rusty's head while he hummed softly. Gradually, the dog's tail began to wag slightly, and for the first time in weeks, Rusty lifted his head and looked around with interest. "He's responding," Tom whispered in amazement. "Rusty hasn't moved like that since Molly died." Within 2 hours of Sam's intervention, Rusty was eating from his bowl and showing signs of the playful energy that had been absent since his companion's death. Tom left the farm that day with tears in his eyes and a renewed faith in the power of compassion. Word spread quickly about Sam's remarkable abilities, and soon Meadowbrook Farm was receiving visitors from across the state. Sarah Henderson found herself coordinating visits from families with sick animals, while Robert worked to manage the increased activity around their normally quiet farm. "We need to be careful not to overwhelm Sam," Sarah cautioned her family during a dinner discussion about the growing attention. "He's still just 8 years old, and this is a lot of responsibility for anyone, let alone a child." But Sam seemed to thrive on the opportunity to help animals in need. His confidence continued to grow with each successful intervention, and his family began to see glimpses of the man he might become, someone whose differences would be the foundation of his greatest strengths. The most challenging case came when Janet Morrison brought her teenage daughter's horse, Spirit, to the farm. The mare had been in a trailer accident that left her with minor physical injuries, but severe psychological trauma. Spirit refused to be ridden, flinched away from human contact, and had developed aggressive behaviors that made her dangerous to handle. 3 different horse trainers have given up on her, Janet explained to the Henderson family. "My daughter Emily is heartbroken. Spirit was her best friend, and now she won't let anyone near her." Sam studied Spirit carefully from a safe distance, observing the mare's body language and the fear that radiated from her every movement. Unlike his previous cases, this animal wasn't grieving. She was terrified and angry. For the first time since beginning his work with animals, Sam seemed uncertain about how to proceed. He spent nearly an hour simply sitting near Spirit's temporary pen, making no attempt to approach her, just allowing her to become accustomed to his presence. "Maybe this one is too damaged," Robert suggested quietly to his son, concerned about the potential danger. But Sam had already begun to develop an approach. He started visiting Spirit 3 times a day, sitting at the same spot outside her pen and humming the same soft melody each time. He made no sudden movements, offered no treats, and made no attempt to touch her. He simply provided consistent, non-threatening presence. On the 3rd day, Spirit began to show curiosity about the small boy who sat so patiently outside her pen. She would approach the fence cautiously, then retreat when Sam moved even slightly. But gradually, her approach distances became shorter, and her retreat responses became less dramatic. The breakthrough came on the 5th day, when Spirit, apparently overcome by curiosity, approached the fence and tentatively sniffed Sam's outstretched hand. The boy remained perfectly still, allowing the mare to investigate him at her own pace. "She's letting him touch her," Emily Morrison whispered, watching from a distance as Sam's fingers made gentle contact with Spirit's nose. Over the following week, Sam worked with Spirit using the same patience and intuitive understanding that had healed Max. He never pushed her beyond her comfort zone, never demanded more trust than she was willing to give, and never lost patience with her setbacks. The day that Spirit allowed Sam to place a halter on her head and lead her around the pen marked a turning point that amazed everyone who witnessed it. The traumatized mare, who had been considered dangerous and untrainable, was calmly following an 8-year-old boy who had never spoken a word to her. "Sam has given my daughter her horse back," Janet Morrison told the Henderson family through tears of gratitude. "But more than that, he's shown us that healing is possible even when everything seems hopeless." As word of Sam's success with Spirit spread, requests for his help began coming from farther away. Veterinarians started referring cases that seemed beyond conventional treatment. Animal rescue organizations asked for consultations with their most difficult cases. The Henderson family found themselves at the center of something much larger than they had anticipated, and they began to realize that Sam's gift was not just about healing individual animals, it was about transforming how people understood the relationship between humans and animals. 3 months after Sam's first healing session with Max, Meadowbrook Farm had quietly become the most talked about animal sanctuary in Kentucky. The Henderson family found themselves hosting visitors from veterinary schools, animal behaviorists, and researchers who wanted to study Sam's extraordinary abilities. Dr. Patricia Wells, a renowned animal psychologist from the University of Kentucky, had been observing Sam's work for 2 weeks. Her findings challenged everything the scientific community thought they knew about human-animal communication. What Sam demonstrates goes beyond traditional animal handling, Dr. Wells explained to the Henderson family during one of her visits. He's exhibiting what we call intuitive interspecies communication, the ability to understand and respond to animal emotional states without verbal or conventional visual cues. Sam, now 9 years old, had developed his abilities to an extraordinary degree. He could assess an animal's psychological condition within minutes of meeting them, and his success rate with traumatized or grieving animals was unprecedented. But the most remarkable aspect of his gift was how it continued to evolve and strengthen with each animal he helped. The case that brought national attention to Sam's work involved a situation that seemed impossible to resolve through conventional means. The Cincinnati Zoo had contacted Dr. Peterson about Coda, a young elephant who had become severely depressed following the death of his mother. Despite the best efforts of elephant specialists and veterinary experts, Coda had stopped eating and was showing signs of giving up entirely. "We've tried everything," explained Dr. Michael Torres, the zoo's chief veterinarian, during a video call with the Henderson family. "Coda won't respond to other elephants, he refuses enrichment activities, and he's declining rapidly. We're running out of options." The idea of taking Sam to work with an elephant seemed overwhelming to his family, but Dr. Wells strongly supported the opportunity. This could provide invaluable insight into the extent of Sam's abilities, she argued, and more importantly, it could save Coda's life. After much discussion, the Henderson family agreed to take Sam to Cincinnati for a consultation with Coda. The zoo arranged for a private session during off hours, ensuring that Sam could work without the pressure of crowds or media attention. When Sam first saw Coda through the protective barriers, the boy's expression grew deeply serious. The young elephant was lying listlessly in his enclosure, his eyes vacant and his movements minimal. Sam studied Coda for nearly an hour before indicating that he wanted to enter the enclosure. "That's not possible, Wesson, Doctor," Torres explained through an interpreter, since Sam communicated primarily through gestures and written notes. "Coda is unpredictable right now, and we can't risk a child's safety." But Sam was insistent. He wrote on his notepad, "Coda knows I want to help. He won't hurt me." After extensive safety preparations and with multiple emergency protocols in place, zoo officials allowed Sam to enter a secure section of Coda's enclosure. The moment Sam stepped inside, Coda lifted his head, the first sign of interest the elephant had shown in weeks. Sam approached Coda with the same patient confidence he had shown with all the animals at Meadowbrook Farm. He sat down in the straw near the elephant's massive head and began his characteristic humming, the soft vocalizations that seemed to communicate safety and understanding across species barriers. The transformation in Coda was gradual but unmistakable. Over the course of 3 hours, the elephant slowly moved closer to Sam until his trunk was gently touching the boy's shoulder. Sam responded by placing his small hand on Coda's trunk, establishing the physical connection that seemed to be crucial to his healing process. "This is unprecedented," Dr. Torres whispered to Dr. Wells as they observed the session. "Coda hasn't shown this level of engagement since his mother died." By the end of Sam's visit, Coda had eaten a small portion of food and had shown interest in his environment for the first time in months. The zoo staff was amazed by the change, but more importantly, they now had a foundation to build upon for Coda's continued recovery. The success with Coda brought Sam to the attention of animal welfare organizations across the country. Requests for his help began arriving from wildlife sanctuaries, rescue operations, and zoos dealing with animals suffering from trauma, depression, or behavioral problems that traditional methods couldn't address. But perhaps the most significant impact of Sam's work was how it changed the perception of his disability within his own community. The boy who had once been seen as limited by his inability to speak was now recognized as possessing extraordinary abilities that transcended conventional communication. Sam has taught us that there are many ways to communicate, his teacher, Mrs. Peterson, told the local newspaper. His work with animals has shown our entire school community that differences should be celebrated, not hidden. The Henderson family began receiving invitations to speak at conferences about disability awareness in animal welfare. Sam's story was becoming a powerful example of how perceived limitations could actually be unique strengths. Dr. Wells had begun documenting Sam's methods in preparation for a research paper that she hoped would influence how the veterinary and psychology communities approach animal trauma treatment. Sam's intuitive understanding of animal emotional states could revolutionize therapeutic practices, she explained to her colleagues at the university. But for Sam himself, the growing recognition meant less than the simple satisfaction of helping animals in need. He continued his daily routine at Meadowbrook Farm, caring for Max and the other animals with the same dedication that had marked his first healing sessions. Max, now fully recovered and healthier than ever, had become Sam's constant companion and collaborator. The bull seemed to understand his role in Sam's work, remaining calm and supportive when traumatized animals were brought to the farm for treatment. "It's like Max knows he's part of something important," William Henderson observed, watching his grandson and the bull work together with a visiting rescue dog. "He's become Sam's partner in healing." The partnership between Sam and Max had created something unprecedented, a healing environment where human intuition and animal wisdom combined to address trauma in ways that neither traditional medicine nor conventional training could achieve. As Sam's 9th birthday approached, the Henderson family reflected on how dramatically their lives had changed since that morning when their mute grandson had first stroked Max's ailing head. What had begun as a simple act of compassion had evolved into a calling that was touching lives across the country. "We always knew Sam was special," Sarah Henderson told a visiting journalist, "but we never imagined that his differences would become the foundation for helping so many others heal." 1 year after Sam's first healing session with Max, Meadowbrook Farm had transformed into something far beyond what the Henderson family had ever imagined. What started as a simple cattle farm in rural Kentucky had become a renowned center for animal-assisted healing, drawing visitors from around the world who sought to understand the extraordinary bond between a mute boy and the creatures he helped heal. Dr. Patricia Wells had published her groundbreaking research on Sam's methods, titling her paper "Silent Communication: Revolutionary Approaches to Animal Trauma Recovery." The work had been accepted by 3 major veterinary journals and was being studied in universities across 5 countries. "Sam has essentially created a new field of therapeutic practice," Dr. Wells explained to a gathering of international animal behaviorists who had come to observe his work. "His ability to communicate with traumatized animals through purely intuitive means is providing insights that are changing how we understand interspecies emotional connection." But for 10-year-old Sam, the scientific recognition mattered less than the daily satisfaction of helping animals find peace. His abilities had continued to develop, and he could now assess an animal's emotional state within minutes of their first meeting. More remarkably, other animals on the farm had begun to assist him in his work, creating a therapeutic community unlike anything documented in veterinary literature. Max, now completely recovered and more magnificent than ever, had become Sam's primary partner in healing work. The massive bull seemed to understand his role, positioning himself near traumatized animals to provide a calming presence while Sam worked. Other farm animals had also taken on supportive roles. Horses would stand quietly near therapy sessions, and even the farm dogs had learned to maintain respectful distances during Sam's treatments. The most remarkable case of the past year had involved Luna, a young wolf who had been rescued from an illegal breeding operation. Luna had been so severely traumatized by human contact that wildlife experts recommended euthanasia as the most humane option. The rescue organization contacted Sam as a last resort. When Luna arrived at Meadowbrook Farm, she was barely functioning, unable to eat regularly, terrified of any human presence, and showing signs of severe psychological breakdown. Even Sam's initial assessments had to be conducted from a distance, as Luna would panic at any attempt at closer interaction. This might be beyond even Sam's abilities. Dr. Peterson had warned the family. Wild animals who've been this severely traumatized rarely recover enough to be successfully rehabilitated. But Sam had approached Luna's case with the same patient determination that had characterized all his work. For 3 weeks, he simply sat near her enclosure for several hours each day, making no attempts at interaction, just providing consistent, non-threatening presence. The breakthrough came when Max, seemingly on his own initiative, positioned himself between Sam and Luna's enclosure during one of the sessions. The young wolf, who had shown fear of humans, appeared curious about the massive bull who radiated such calm energy. Over the following weeks, Luna began to trust Max's presence, and gradually, by extension, Sam's presence as well. The healing process took nearly 3 months, but eventually Luna recovered enough to be successfully relocated to a wildlife sanctuary where she could live in a natural pack environment. Sam didn't just heal Luna, explained Dr. Sarah Chen, the wildlife specialist who had overseen the case. He gave her back her ability to trust, which is essential for any wolf's survival in a pack setting. The success with Luna had brought Sam to the attention of wildlife conservation organizations worldwide. Requests for his help were now coming from Africa, where orphaned elephants needed trauma counseling, and from Asia, where rescued bears required psychological rehabilitation. But the Henderson family had made a decision to keep Sam's work centered at Meadowbrook Farm, creating a place where animals could come for healing rather than sending their young son around the world. Sam's gift is powerful, but he's still a child, Sarah Henderson explained to the constant stream of requests they received. We've built something special here, and this is where he can do his best work. The farm now employed a full-time staff of animal care specialists, veterinarians, and researchers who worked alongside Sam to provide comprehensive care for traumatized animals. The operation was funded through donations from grateful families whose animals Sam had helped, research grants from universities studying his methods, and support from animal welfare organizations that recognize the revolutionary nature of his work. But perhaps the most significant development was how Sam's work had inspired other young people with disabilities to explore their own unique abilities. The Henderson family regularly hosted visits from children who had been told they were limited by their differences, showing them through Sam's example that perceived disabilities could actually be extraordinary gifts. Sam has become a role model for an entire generation of children who are different, explained Mrs. Peterson, his former teacher, who now served as an educational consultant for the farm's youth programs. He's proven that there are many ways to communicate, many ways to contribute, and many ways to make a difference in the world. On the anniversary of his first session with Max, Sam participated in a quiet celebration that honored not just his healing work, but the journey of growth and discovery that had brought the entire Henderson family to this point. Max, now serving as the farm's gentle giant and Sam's constant companion, stood peacefully as Sam brushed his glossy coat, the same activity that had marked the beginning of their extraordinary partnership. The bull's recovery had been complete for months, but their daily grooming sessions continued as a ritual that maintained the bond between them. It all started here, William Henderson told a small gathering of family, staff, and close friends who had come to mark the anniversary. With a sick bull and a boy who saw what the rest of us missed, that healing isn't always about medicine. Sometimes it's about understanding, patience, and the courage to reach out to someone who's suffering. As the sun set over Meadowbrook Farm, Sam sat in his favorite spot in Max's pasture, surrounded by the community of healed animals who had found refuge under his care. His notebook, always present for communication with humans, lay beside him as he simply enjoyed the peaceful presence of the creatures who had taught him as much as he had helped them. Dr. Wells, documenting the anniversary for her ongoing research, observed the scene with the wonder that had never diminished despite months of studying Sam's work. What we're witnessing here isn't just remarkable, she noted in her journal, it's transformative. Sam has proven that the deepest healing happens not through words or traditional medicine, but through the pure intention to understand and help another being. His silence has taught us to hear what really matters. The mute boy who had once stroked an ailing bull's head had become a healer whose influence extended far beyond the farm where it all began. But for Sam, the greatest reward remained the simple trust of animals who had learned to hope again. and the knowledge that being different had allowed him to make a difference that would last far beyond his own lifetime. In the quiet of the evening, with Max's steady breathing beside him and the peaceful sounds of a farm full of healing animals around him, Sam smiled his rare, beautiful smile. No words were needed to express the contentment of a calling fulfilled and a gift shared with the world. This remarkable true story reminds us that the greatest healing often comes, not through words, but through the simple act of one heart reaching out to understand another, regardless of the barriers that seem to separate us. A mute boy stroked the ailing bull's head. What happened next? United the entire farm family in tears,